If you want to build better habits fast, you need to understand that habits are not just behaviors you repeat. They are patterns your nervous system wires into efficiency. Every habit you perform is encoded through circuits that are constantly evaluating effort versus reward. The brain is always asking a simple question beneath the surface. Is this worth the energy? If the answer becomes yes, repeatedly and consistently, the behavior gets automated. If the answer is no, it fades. So the process of building better habits quickly is not about forcing yourself through willpower alone. It's about aligning your biology with the behaviors you want to repeat. The first thing to recognize is that your brain is highly plastic, meaning it is designed to change based on what you do consistently. But plasticity doesn't happen randomly. It follows specific rules. One of the most important rules is attention. Whatever you pay attention to with focus and intention gets prioritized for change. This means that if you go through a habit mindlessly, you are slowing down the process of making it stick. But if you bring deliberate awareness to what you're doing, even for a short period of time, you accelerate learning. So when you're trying to build a habit, don't just perform it. Engage with it. Feel it. Notice it. This sends a signal to your brain that this action matters. Another key principle is friction. Your brain prefers the path of least resistance. If a habit is difficult to start, it will struggle to become consistent. This is why reducing the activation energy of a habit is critical. You don't need to make the habit perfect. You need to make it easy to begin. If your goal is to exercise, don't start with a 1-hour workout. Start with 5 minutes. If your goal is to read, start with 1 page. This is not about lowering your standards. It's about bypassing the resistance that prevents action. Once you start, momentum often carries you further than you planned. And that momentum is what rewires your brain. There is also a powerful role of timing in habit formation. Your brain and body operate on rhythms, particularly your circadian rhythm, which governs when you feel alert and when you feel tired. If you align your habits with times when your energy is naturally higher, you increase the likelihood of success. For most people, the early part of the day is when focus and discipline are strongest. This makes it an ideal time to install habits that require effort. When you repeatedly perform a behavior at the same time each day, your brain begins to anticipate it. Over time, it becomes easier to initiate because it is linked to a specific moment in your daily cycle. Reward is another essential component. But here's where most people misunderstand the process. The brain doesn't just respond to the reward itself, but it responds to the anticipation of reward. Dopamine, a chemical associated with motivation, is released not only when you achieve something, but when you expect something positive to happen. This means that if you can learn to associate a sense of progress or satisfaction with the act of performing the habit itself, you can accelerate its formation. Instead of waiting until the end to feel good, you train yourself to feel good during the process. This shift changes everything. One of the fastest ways to build habits is through consistency, not intensity. Doing something every day, even in a small way, is far more effective than doing it occasionally in a big way. Consistency sends a clear signal to your brain. This is part of who I am. Each repetition strengthens the neural pathways associated with that behavior. And over time, those pathways become the default. This is how habits become automatic, not through occasional bursts of effort, but through steady, repeated action. Your environment plays a massive role in shaping your habits. If your environment supports the behavior you want, you reduce the need for willpower. If it works against you, you make everything harder. This means that if you want to build better habits fast, you need to design your surroundings to make those habits easier, place cues in your environment that remind you of the behavior, remove distractions that pull you away. If you want to eat healthier, don't rely on discipline alone. Change what's available around you. If you want to focus, create a space that minimizes interruptions. Your environment should work for you, not against you. There's also an important concept called identity. The habits you build are not just things you do. They shape who you believe you are. And your brain is highly motivated to act in ways that are consistent with your identity. So instead of saying, I'm trying to build this habit, shift to, this is who I am. When you see yourself as someone who exercises, someone who reads, someone who takes action, your behavior starts to align with that identity. This is not about pretending. It's about reinforcing a pattern through repeated evidence. Every time you perform the habit, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become. Another powerful tool is what's called habit stacking. This involves attaching a new habit to an existing one. Your brain already has strong neural pathways for habits you perform regularly. By linking a new behavior to something you already do, you use those existing pathways to support the new habit. For example, if you already drink coffee every morning, you can attach a new habit to that routine. like writing a few lines or reviewing your goals. This reduces the need to remember or initiate the habit from scratch. It becomes part of a sequence, and sequences are easier for the brain to maintain. You also need to understand the role of discomfort. Building new habits often involves stepping outside your comfort zone, and your brain is designed to resist discomfort because it interprets it as a potential threat. But here's the key. The more you expose yourself to manageable levels of discomfort, the more your brain adapts. What once felt difficult becomes normal. This is how growth happens, not by avoiding discomfort, but by gradually increasing your tolerance for it. When you embrace this process, you stop seeing resistance as a barrier and start seeing it as a signal that you're moving in the right direction. Accountability can also accelerate habit formation. When you commit to something publicly or involve another person, you increase the stakes. Your brain becomes more invested in following through because there is a social component. This doesn't mean you need external pressure all the time, but it can be a powerful tool in the early stages of building a habit. Over time, as the habit becomes more ingrained, you rely less on external accountability and more on internal consistency. Sleep and recovery are often overlooked, but they are critical for habit formation. During sleep, your brain consolidates what you've learned during the day. Neural connections are strengthened and patterns are reinforced. If you are not getting enough quality sleep, you are essentially slowing down your brain's ability to adapt. This means that even if you are putting in the effort, the results may not come as quickly. Prioritizing sleep is not just about rest. It's about optimizing your brain's capacity to change. There's also the concept of tracking. When you track your habits, you create a visual representation of your progress. This provides feedback, which is essential for learning. Your brain needs to see evidence that what you're doing is working. Tracking also creates a sense of accountability to yourself. You become more aware of your actions, and that awareness drives consistency. It doesn't need to be complicated. Even a simple check mark each day can be enough to reinforce the behavior. One of the biggest mistakes people make is expecting immediate results. Habit formation is a process, not an event. The changes happening in your brain are gradual, but they are happening. Every repetition matters, even if you don't see the results right away. The key is to trust the process and stay consistent. Over time, the small actions compound into significant change. What feels difficult today becomes effortless tomorrow. You also need to be careful with perfectionism. Trying to do everything perfectly can actually slow you down. It creates pressure and increases the likelihood of quitting when things don't go as planned. Instead, focus on progress. Allow yourself to make mistakes and keep going. The goal is not to be perfect, it's to be consistent. Each time you return to the habit, you strengthen it. Another important factor is emotional state. Your brain learns more effectively when you are in a state of moderate alertness. Too much stress can impair learning, while too little engagement can reduce motivation. Finding a balance is key. This might involve using tools like breathing techniques, movement, or brief breaks to regulate your state. When your mind is clear and focused, your ability to build habits improves. Finally, understand that building better habits fast is not about rushing the process, but about optimizing it. It's about using the principles of how your brain works to your advantage. When you align your actions with your biology, you remove unnecessary resistance. You make it easier for your brain to adopt new patterns. And when those patterns become automatic, they free up your mental energy for other things. The power of habits lies in their ability to shape your life without requiring constant effort. Once a habit is established, it runs in the background. It becomes part of who you are. And that's where the real transformation happens. Not in a single moment of motivation, but in the quiet, consistent actions you take every day